So today's topic is gonna be a little something that huge nerds like me will love. It involves a healthy amount of math, RNG, and it all comes together to give us one of the most interesting aspects of Pokemon, which to my knowledge hadn't been done before it. And that is stats. But Red, stats have always been part of RPGs. That wasn't new to Pokemon at all. Well, I hear you, of course, like that's definitely true, but they have never been done like this, as I said, at least to my knowledge. In every Pokemon game, there is at least one NPC that will tell you something along the lines of each Pokemon is unique, two Redditas are never the same, and there is a lot of truth to that. Why do you ask? Let's just take a look at these two level 5 Pikachus that I received at the beginning of the game. Even though they are both the same species, Pikachu, same level, 5, and obtained in the same way, gift from Professor Oak, they have different values for each stat. Some of them are the same, sure, but I guarantee that as the Pikachu levels up, those stats that are equal will very likely change. And why is that, you ask? Well, you see, the number that shows up on the Pokemon summary screen is the result of a combination of a few different variables. Those being, first of all, what species your Pokemon is, whether we're talking about a Bulbasaur, Hitmonlee, Dragonite, Caterpie, Metapod, Butterfree, or whatever. Species is a huge determinant. Why is that? Because of base stats, those little things that I always talk about whenever we meet a new Pokemon. Each species will be good at doing a certain thing. Some species will have really high HP, some species will have really high attack, some species will have really high defense, some species will have really high speed, and some species will have really high special. So the species definitely impact your stats. Next variable is the current level of the Pokemon. It's just whether we're talking about a level 5, 9, 37, or 100 Pokemon. Level will also impact your Pokemon stats. The higher the level, the higher the stats. That one I also think it's pretty obvious, but you know, if you've been teaching as long as I have, which is like not long at all, you'd know that the obvious isn't always known by everyone. So, and after those two very obvious details, there are two more values that aren't actually shown by the game ever. I think the first time it happened was maybe in Generation 3 or 4, when we actually got a peek into what one of those numbers was. Today in Generation 7, it's actually a lot easier to know these two hidden values, but since we're talking about Generation 1, I would say that it is pretty much impossible to know accurately these two hidden values. So, normally, we don't have access to them, maybe you can hack the game and find out, and they have just as much impact as the previous two. Well, maybe not as heavily, but they definitely impact just as much. Those two hidden stats are called determinant values and stat experience. Now, it is important to note that in Generation 3, both DVs and Stat XP were reworked into systems that are both easier to understand and control, and they also give you more opportunities to make Pokemon even more unique. Also, because of said rework, both those variables received a new name. DVs became IVs and Stat XP became EVs. If you play Pokemon Go, if you watch Pokemon Go on YouTube, then you probably have heard a lot about IVs. But even though they have different names after Generation 3, they still work the same way they do in their Generations 1 and 2 counterparts, just using different numbers and names. So since we're talking about Generation 1, I'm gonna be using Generation 1 terms. Just remember that you can trace the parallels between the oldest and newest generations. Now, DVs are numbers that the game randomly generates whenever a new Pokemon is created. Pokemon are created when a wild battle starts, or after receiving it as a gift, which is the case for, starters, in-game trades, and, actual gift Pokemon, like Eevee or Lapras that we'll see later on in the game. The DV number can go anywhere from 0 to 15. 0 is a possibility, just like 15. 16? No. Negatives? No. But 0 to 15? Yes. And they can never be changed or manipulated. That was until Generation 7 with Hyper Training. Also, DVs are individual for each stat, so HP will have a randomly generated DV, Attack will have another randomly generated DV, and the same for Defense, and the same for Special, and the same for Speed. And Stat XP is a little number that works a lot like Experience. Oh my, it's almost as if they named it accordingly. After you defeat a Pokemon, all of that species base stats will be added to every Pokemon that fought against it as the Stat XP variable. So if you fought a Machamp, all the Pokemon that participated and survived the battle will gain 130 points in their attack, Stat XP, as well as 90 HP, 80 defense, 55 speed, and 65 special. All of that to the Stat XP variable. And when you put those 4 variables together in a neat little formula, you get the number that you can see on the summary screen. It works kind of like Captain Planet if you really want to stretch it. Base stats, level, stat XP, DVs, that's Oxylas Powers Lane. By your powers combined, I am unique Pokemon. Awesome gameplay, it's real neato. Makes the nerds feel like a superhero. So really, that's all you actually need to know when it comes to stat. But of course, you can't expect me, a self-proclaimed super Pokénerd, to just go say, hey guys, this is all you need, see you in 2 months, bye bye. No, of course not. Of course I'm gonna talk and gush about all the math behind it all. I mean, real talk here. Did any of you expect me to not cover the math behind it at all? I mean, how often do you watch the channel? As often as I upload them. So, basically, never, right? Man, if only there was a way to be notified when a new video from the channel goes live, huh? If only there was like something kind of like a big yellow red button just itching to be clicked. Or maybe something like a bell waiting to be rung. If only there was something like this. This is that part of the video where I start blabbing about numbers, where they come from, where they go, and what they like to do with each other. So if for any reason at all you don't feel comfortable living near these guys, you can skip ahead to the timestamp on screen, no judgment. I know it's hard to get along with absolutely everyone, you can skip it, I promise, you'll only miss out on the things you presumably dislike. Oh, you're still here? Great! Now that all the uncool people are out of the party...
Let's talk business.
Oh man, is this a drug deal?
The way to determine the value of a stat is by using a simple formula that takes into account a constant and the variables we talked about before. First, you gotta figure out which stat you're gonna calculate for. HP will use this formula, while the other 4, or for Generation 2, 5 stat, will use this other formula. The difference has to be there in order to have a balanced game. I mean, seriously, try calculating HP by using the other formula. You'll see how broken the game goes if you just use another formula for HP. Like damage you deal will knock out every single Pokemon that you face, maybe even like Chansey or Blissey. So yeah, a different formula for HP, because of balance. And now that you know which stat you're gonna calculate, all you gotta do is plug in the numbers. It is that simple. So level is very self-explanatory. If you're calculating the stat of a level 5 Pokemon, you're gonna put the number 5 where it says level. Duh! Base is also pretty simple. You only need 2 things, 1 the species of the Pokemon and 2 a website that shows you the base stats for that Pokemon. You can check out the description below for Bulbapedia links. If you're calculating, for example, on a champ's attack, all you have to do is put the number 130 where it says base. Same goes for any other stat. Don't forget that in Generation 1 you use the stat special, not special attack and special defense. So you gotta look at the little footnote in Bulbapedia in order to find out what the special base is. You with me so far? Good. This is the part where it starts to get not very simple. For the variable IV, we're gonna use those DVs we talked about. Now, without hacking the game or taking our Pokemon through a calculator, there is no way to accurately know its DV for whatever stat you're looking for. Remember that each stat has its own DV, so the number you're using when you're calculating defense will probably not be the same you use to calculate special. DV is a randomly generated number, which its lowest value can be 0 and its highest value can be 15. And the last variable is EV, the Generation 3 equivalent for stat XP. This is by far the worst variable to plug into the equation, because if it's not its maximum value, then it's actual hell to figure out what number to put in. Stat XP is earned every single time you defeat a Pokemon, so that Geodude that just popped up and I used Water Gun to take it down, yeah, that just indicates stat XP value for all my stats. Thankfully, the game only takes into account your stat XP when you level up or deposit a Pokemon to the PC. So unless one of those 2 things happen, the stat XP you used before will not change in the formula. But it is still a pain to keep track of. The only way you can actually know what your current stat XP for a certain stat is if you keep a journal of every gosh darn freaking single Caterpie and Rattata you've defeated since the very beginning of the game. Then all you have to do is add up all of their base stats and you have your current stat XP to plug into the formula. So easy! So let's say for example that on your way to Viridian City from Pallet Town for the very first time, you ran into and defeated a total of 4 Rattatas and 2 Pidgeys with your brand new Professor Oak issued Pikachu. So that is 30 HP times 4 plus 40 HP times 2 if give me 200 HP stat XP. For attack that's 56 times... That's 160 70 special stat XP. Woo! Ah, that took me like 3 whole minutes just for 6 Pokemon defeated. Yeah, you can see how this would get painful if I were to try and calculate my team's current stat XP, right? Yeah, I've probably defeated anywhere from like 100 to 150 Pokemon so far, and that's because I run away from battles and I use repels from time to time. So when you're calculating something brand new like the first 10 battles, it's not that bad. Like 6 Pokemon, that took me just 3 minutes. But if you wanna scale it up to your current point in the adventure, then yeah. Manually keeping track of stat XP is just too much work for not enough payoff. Remember that we're doing all of this just to find out a little number that the game shows us. But stat XP caps off at 65,535 points. So, if you have killed a total of 656 Mews, all your stat XPs are maxed out. So simple! Also, any item that's considered a vitamin will increase the respective stat XP by 2,560. But vitamins will not work if the current stat XP is 23,040, aka they can't make the stat XP go higher than 25,600. This means that if you have used a vitamin and it works, that one stat has not yet risen above 25,600, just like it happened with my Clefairy earlier this video. And don't forget to take into account the vitamin bonus, so you know, the previous stat XP plus the 2500. Something. And if it doesn't work, then it means that the stat XP is above 23,040. That's one way to gauge stat XP, even though it still doesn't give you a solid number. Now that we know what each variable is and how to gauge it, we can start working with the formula. Let's use Zoo from episode 1 as an example. So we know that his level was 5, it's a Pikachu, and it's brand new, so for all its values, stat XP is 0. The only thing that we don't know is its DVs. So let's use the very average 8, perfectly between 0 and 15, to see how Zoo compares to the average Pikachu. Now when you run the numbers of a Pikachu with 8 DVs for every stat, you're gonna end up with these values. This is the average Pikachu. I'm gonna put up Zoo's stats right there, side by side, so you can compare. One important thing to remember is that the game ignores decimals, so the actual average is this. And there you have it. That is what a Pikachu with 8 across all DVs has for its stats. So with that, you can see that the first suit that I got was a very average Pikachu. HP was spot on average, attack was 1 point lower, defense was 1 point higher. But speed was actually spot on and special was actually 1 point higher than average. Not that it matters because, you know, after I regard the game, just...
Wait. You have got to be kidding me.
Yeah. That's not all. By using the very same formula, we can actually find out Zoo's actual DVs. But instead of calculating them by hand, I'm just gonna plug this awesome website that calculates DVs for you. Boom, easy. Thanks, website developer. A couple things about the website is that, first of all, it's for Generation 2, not Generation 1, so calculating a special DV can be a bit of a pain for reasons that will be explained when we get to Generation 2. But if you want to find out what that is, I'm gonna leave the Bulbapedia link down below, and then you can, you know, just look it up. And second, you can see that the website doesn't actually give you a perfect match for DVs, and that is because any one of those DV values that the website gave me will result in the same final stat. Don't believe me, do the math yourself, just plug the numbers in and follow the formula. So the only thing this website can do is give you a range of DVs. Zoo's lowest possible DV is this one, and its highest possible DV is this one. But the actual number can be anything in between. How will you find out? Level up. If your Pokemon is higher level, then the calculator will be a lot more precise. But it only has a setting for 0 stat XP or max stat XP, because it's a pain to track stat XP. So if your Pokemon is neither of those, then it will be pretty hard to calculate precisely what your DVs are. But alas, it's a tool that you can use if you so desire. Now, another really interesting thing about the calculator, not, you know, stats in general, is that if you plug a Pokemon's actual stats into the formula with 0 stat XP, you know, using DV as the value you want to find, then you're not actually gonna get the number you want. You're not actually gonna get a proper DV. When I plugged in Zeus episode 1 numbers, the result I got was -30. And I actually wrote the formula on an online equation solver because yes, high schoolers, those exist. And wouldn't you know it, same result. So this leads me to believe that the calculator runs every single one of the 16 from 0 to 15 possible DVs and tells you which ones result in the same stat your Pokemon has instead of the expected solve for IV. And when you think about it, it makes even more sense when you speak of coding about such a specific calculator. So, before you judge the developer of the website, just, do a little thinking and you'll see why they don't give you an option to put in the precise stat XPs. But, modern calculators for the modern generations, it's a lot easier to keep track of what stat XP became, EVs. So, current calculators actually allow you to put in the EVs. And that about sums up the math. Now, what is that all used for? Well, for that we would have to get into damage calculation. And I would rather not make this video over an hour long. So, there. I'm just gonna cut it off here, and maybe next time we'll actually talk about damage calculation and the impact of all of these things that we just talked about. For now, take this as just, a pre-game for what's about to come. And if you looked at the math, not necessary of course, but if you did, you're gonna see that DVs and stat XP are pretty important. They are not the most important thing, of course. A Machamp will always have a higher attack stat than an Alakazam. That's just how the species work. Species matter a lot more than DV and stat XP, simply because of their placement in the formula. But still, if you have 0 DVs and 0 stat XP, then your stat will be a lot lower than if you had 15 DV and max stat XP. So, it may not look like much, but it actually does matter a healthy amount. So if you really want to get the very best Pokemon you can possibly get, then you need to do some trial and error until you can get the proper DVs, and then you can start leveling up those stat XPs. I'll talk a little more about it when we start talking about competitive battling, but yeah, for now, just remember, your Pokemon may not be the very best Pokemon that there is, but it may also not be the worst. So just love it regardless, because if you want to find out, you're gonna get a headache. And by the way, Rock Tunnel was so painful, it was so painful, so don't be surprised by my reaction when I get out of it. Just, oh my gosh, I surprised myself during editing. That's all I have to say. We're out! We're out!